Thank you very much for inviting me here, and good afternoon to all my friends and colleagues. I will just briefly say that Norway, as other European states, supported the UN Partition Plan in 1947. We still recognize the right of both peoples to exercise self-determination by dividing the land in historic Palestine in two states. 70 years later, we still work for the realization of this project, because we are convinced, as my colleague Lars said here, that there is no other solution or formula that can provide peace and security to both peoples. Since 1993, the role of Norway has been clear. We have been taking the lead among the donors in the efforts to build the institutions for a Palestinian state. We refer to this as state building, and we do it by building the state bottom up. We feel that after the failure of negotiating a final status agreement, particularly now in 2014, this failure has had an important impact on the international community and its approach to solving the conflict. The Quartet report from the US, the UN, the EU, and Russia that was issued last summer signals a rather dramatic shift in the international community's approach, and I think it's important to note it. Negotiations to reach a comprehensive agreement to end the conflict is put on hold until the parties are ready. Meantime, the report calls for a strategy to reverse the current dangerous trends that undermine, and I quote the report, the hope for peace, and to take affirmative steps to advance a peaceful two-state reality on the ground. The question then is, how do we do this? How do we translate the new international consensus into a workable strategy and plan for building the two-state reality from bottom up? This is far from straightforward. But I think that a good place to start is from the bottom-up agenda that we are working on in the context of the donor coordination group that Norway is leading. And I will start with the bad news. The challenges we need to address even before we start constructing a broadening agenda is first that in the current political context is not very conducive to building this state bottom-up. The Quartet report itself was very hard to swallow for both parties, and perhaps more for the Palestinians than for Israel. Only the leaders on both sides can make the required moves and implement a bottom-up strategy. And they are boxed into political positions that will need reformulation in order to open up and broaden the strategy as far as we need to follow this strategy. In our view, we have to start from what is possible today and gradually open these boxes and see if we can implement an agenda that is broader. For the moment, we have only seen relatively small steps, and we need to go to much more bigger steps, affirmative steps in the language of the Quartet. And we have to do it in a situation where the political horizon is fading away. A second challenge that we see is that over the last years, the bottom-up state-building process shows alarming signs. Institutional reforms in the PA are slowing down. The Palestinian economy has taken severe blows. The donors are losing hope and staying away. The Israeli public is adamantly opposed to concessions, and the cabinet in Israel seems to require some political payback for making significant moves. And those are paybacks that, frankly, Abbas cannot deliver. The Israeli government coalition seems to be under threat if the settlement building is slowed further down. In the last meeting of the donors in New York in last September, we made progress in addressing the second challenge, the situation for the PA. The meeting discussed the need to strengthen the Palestinian economy and to sustain the viability of a future Palestinian state. The meeting called in short term for balancing the budget of the PA, and here the ongoing dialogue between the Ministries of Finance is quite essential. The meeting also called for more longer-term infrastructure projects that are needed in order to build a viable, independent, contiguous and sovereign state. There is no doubt the meeting generated new energy and interest by donors and should be continued and substantially enlarged. We were very encouraged by the electricity deal that was entered between the PA and the Israeli government. It provides an interesting model. It transfers the control over the energy market in the West Bank and Gaza to the PA. It will certainly require that the PA build new institutions as well as a technical infrastructure. But if implemented well, it will not only allow the PA to provide more electricity for its population, but it will do so based on own infrastructure and with the possibility to purchase energy from Israel and others and gradually replace this with own production based on gas or renewable energy. A similar step is required for water. Theoretically, there should be enough water available for the Palestinians to receive same amounts and quality of water as the Israelis. And a solution is required for allowing for Palestinian desalination. I will point in the following directions for building the two-state reality bottom-up. First, we need a strategy for a coordinated approach in Gaza. One thing is to rebuild destroyed housing and existing infrastructure in Gaza. This alone will not suffice to redress the humanitarian situation in Gaza. We need to transform the living conditions by providing water, electricity, and improved access and movement for goods and people. Required volumes of water and electricity is 3 times what you have today. We need much more imports of goods. We need building materials, and we need production inputs. Those materials coming in are far from enough. The economy needs a kickstart out of its current deep depression. Gaza needs access to the outside world in ways that do not contradict, of course, with the safety and security of the civilian populations in the area. We saw in 2009, 2010, 2011 that when we have materials going in and we could have exports going out, the growth in Gaza went up to double digit, over 20% per year. In the West Bank, the economic performance is much better than in Gaza, but there is a long way to go here too. On the current agenda is already to strengthen PA's domestic income, to reduce the dependency on donors, and to shift towards productive investments. Also on the current agenda is enhancing trade. Modernization and upgrade of the crossings are essential elements here. Businesses and entrepreneurs need better infrastructure for trade. Bonded warehouses, efficient transport channels, efficient customs and clearance administration, etc., etc. But the next affirmative steps will be much larger. In my opinion, the first step would be to focus on how to solve the internal connectivity challenges by building an efficient transportation system that can link the various parts and cities inside the West Bank. Internal connectivity in the Palestinian area is shockingly poor. There are no high-speed transportation access, either north-south or east-west, that could create internal connectivity in the otherwise non-contiguous areas. My last point is to call for expanding Palestinian access to building and economic exploitation of the Area C. It has been repeatedly demonstrated beyond any doubt that this is a key to create growth in the Palestinian economy. Most of these measures can be taken already now within existing political frameworks, even without having an umbrella of ongoing negotiations. They do not contradict or prejudge future agreements and will rather be helpful in strengthening the future basis for negotiations. I also think, and that is with reference to the quartet report, that we can think security in the same bottom-up strategy way. We can start build on the security cooperation that is ongoing, enlarge it and strengthen it, so that we can and widen it to include also other regional partners, and at least start a dialogue on how to do so. That's quite possible today, and it will be very helpful for the steps we have to take tomorrow in order to get back to negotiations and fulfill the political agreement. This is what I have to say. Thank you very much.